This episode is sponsored by Michelle Glass. Are you or your clients curious about psilocybin for healing and transformation? Michelle Glass, a licensed psilocybin facilitator and level 3 certified IFS practitioner, offers a deeply attuned, self-led approach to psilocybin-assisted journeys. From preparation to journey day and into integration, Michelle provides the essential guidance needed for a respectful, supportive, and transformational experience. Learn more and schedule an appointment at thelistenerllc.com. Welcome to Season 6 of the One Inside an Internal Family Systems podcast. I'm Tammy Sollenberger, author of The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about their inner world and who have a desire to connect to that authentic self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I am super excited today to have Rick Kahler on the podcast. He is a pioneer in integrating financial planning and psychology. He is a co-founder of Financial Therapy and a founding board member and past chair of the Financial Therapy Association. He became one of the first certified financial therapists and is also a certified IFS practitioner. And he is the founder of IFS Informed Financial Therapy. I think that's awesome. You have also written how many books? Seven? Seven books. And you are the producer and host of the Financial Therapy podcast. It's not just about the money. So welcome, Rick. Why don't we start with where we always start, which is where you are in the world and what you see out of your nearest window.
Yes, when I look out my window, I'm seeing my driveway. And in the center of my driveway are a bunch of trees, and all sprinkled around in the street outside, there are pine trees. So I live on the edge of Rapid City, South Dakota, which would be right into the foothills of the Black Hills.
And I've actually seen your backyard, and your backyard is a huge hill. I mean, it's incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, the view off my deck is a little better than out my office window, which is this a mini canyon. Um, and there's houses around, but you can't see a lot of them. So it's really nice neighborhood being close to Rapid City. I'm 11 minutes from my downtown office, and I'm watching deer and turkey and raccoons and whatever else, the occasional mountain lion off my deck.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, Rick, you were a financial planner first? Is that kind of how this journey started? Would you have said that you were a financial planner and then you found IFS?
Yes, I was in the real estate profession. From that, I discovered financial planning, which is looking at someone's big financial picture. From there, I discovered therapy, which was the gift of a divorce.
Mm.
Um, from there, I actually uh, co founded Financial Therapy and discovered IFS about 10 years later, I would guess, in around 2017.
So my guess is you were a financial planner and realized this is the story I'm making up. Realized that you needed to do something different, right? You weren't just gonna kind of move people's money around or do whatever you do with people's money. You actually needed, and it was important to have this extra step of doing financial therapy.
The intuitive part of you is working very well. Yes, I attended a workshop in 1999, I think. And it really became clear to me first how money, spirit, and emotions all come together,
Mm.
which is something I never saw. I didn't think spirit and money had anything to do with each other. And from that, I also saw where financial planning was going, which would be it would become a commodity. I didn't envision artificial intelligence in 1999, but I did see eventually that it would be like flipping hamburgers at a McDonald's. And that the only thing that really would remain that maybe a computer couldn't do is the relationship.
Mm.
And understanding that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically, which a part of me did not receive that message very well at all.
Ooh. Oh, do you wanna say more?
My logical part did not like that.
Rick is also an Enneagram 1, so I could imagine that your Enneagram 1 parts were like, "Mm-mm, no."
No, no, it's all logical. In fact, ironically, the whole field of economics is founded on the notion that people make rational financial decisions. Now, just being a financial planner's office for a week, and you can throw that right out the window. So I told myself, if I'm going to remain relevant, I'm going to have to learn how the brain works. I'm going to have to learn something about this thing called psychology, which was certainly threatening to me 10 years prior to that. I was the guy that actually walked out of a session where a psychologist was speaking to us at a workshop saying, "What is he doing here? We have nothing to do with psychology. We are numbers people."
So, you discovered that doing financial therapy, working with emotions and spirit and relationships was really, really important, and did you find that that was making a change in how you and the customer or client kind of did financial therapy or sort of handled financial planning?
Yeah, there's a whole subset of financial planning profession that's popped up starting about that same time, around 2000, called life planning or financial life planning. And that's integrating uh, behaviors and emotions with financial planning. And so, for example, there's a lot of courses on that I teach at Golden Gate University. A course called Facilitating Financial Health, and it's for therapists, planners, coaches on how do you work with people, how do you be with people around money and emotions. So that is still gaining traction. A lot of financial planners don't even know financial life planning exists, but it's becoming more and more of a thing. That is separate from financial therapy and financial therapy. So if a person wants a financial planner that's clued into the importance of emotions and not going to look at you as a logical person and dollars and cents, a financial life planner is a great step. But very few financial life planners also do or are financial therapists, which is really quite not quite, but separate from financial planning. They can go together, but it's a very different engagement.
Okay, so I'm biting. What's the big difference?
The big difference is financial therapy is going to be focused on where are you stuck. People will ask me, how do I know if I need financial therapy? And my short answer is if you're stuck on any financial decision. Typically, in IFS terms, and I know that the audience here would probably be very familiar with this, there's a polarization going on. A part of me wants to live here and another part of me there, or any type of part of me wants to spend the money for that, part of me wants to save the money for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a part that wants a budget, right? Like, just write a budget, like simple things. Like, we're not talking, just write a budget. And I have another part, and I'll get apps. I'll get all these apps. And then I have another part that's like, yeah, we don't want to do that at all. So
Yeah.
my stuck point is like a really simple, like everyday stuck point versus like, do I want to spend huge amounts of money on this or that? Just, and I'm wondering if I'm probably like a lot of other people that are like just simple.
Totally. I mean, um, it's simple, and yet the most simple stuckness can be complex.
Mm.
Because as we walk that back, as you know, and we get to know the parts and the protectors and the exiles with under that, that probably permeates into other areas.
Yeah, okay, so let's take this example, if this feels okay, let's take this example, right? Like, a part of me says I need a budget or some sort of financial, spending plan, like a spending plan, which I think is different than a budget, but, and then another part's like, "No, thank you." And so what that has to do with is not just behaviorally, it's about my parts and sort of what comes before that. So is that where money scripts come in, or is that different?
Yeah, money script. So we would work with that part, and there's a it could be very interesting for that part to say, well, what if a budget is a spending plan?
Mm.
Does that shift anything? Because they are. And some parts can get really on board with a spending plan. Oh, yeah, I can spend.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I'm just thinking about the words. Budget feels restricting. Spending
Mhm.
plan, I actually feel like that feels like freedom.
Yes, totally.
Hmm,
And
this is some
working
good
with,
financial therapy for me today.
well, and so often in working with a client, I'll ask, would that part like some more information? Because what is happening and one of the differences between traditional IFS therapy and IFS informed financial therapy is the financial therapist has the emotional part, or I'm sorry, has the financial part. So where a therapist may not know if there's a difference between a budget and a spending plan and what they are, I can hold that I know they're the same. My financial part is in and out of sessions, right? What?
Yeah.
Oh, those are the same. And then can make a self-led determination. Is that important information right now? And if it's seemingly that it might be, that it might shift things, just like an unburdening uh, does, is to say, would that part like some more information? And if the part does, I can say, well, what if a spending plan and a budget are the same? And then having it'd be very common for that part to have the same reaction you just had, like, one of those sounds great, and one sounds so constraining. And it's simple stuff like we know in IFS therapy that can just open the floodgates.
Yeah, and I'm thinking this is how it feels like because you're a financial therapist or it's IFS financial therapy, I can trust you because you have the financial piece that I don't have. And probably like many of the listeners, no one else in my life does, right? Like my mom, dad, like we sort of, no one talked about money. I don't think there's anybody in my life that knows what we're doing with money. And so it's like it almost feels like your your self-led guidance around financial therapy feels like it's almost like you're letting me have some of yourself that's and I'm not saying it right, but it's almost like you're a container for that that feels way more safe to me than if even I was just talking to my therapist about my parts around money. I think that feels different actually.
Yeah, and there is that difference because the financial therapist, the IFS therapist, um, say that's a certified financial therapist, has that part, has the money understanding. So part of my intake is to find out a little bit about the person financially, because um, a person can present that I'm on the verge of bankruptcy and the parts are scared to death. Well, if I've done some intake and I see that they have, like with one client, $5 million net worth, they're not on the verge of bankruptcy. I know that. And so uh, it helps me just have a perspective. And I may or may not bring that up, but I know, okay, they're not on the verge of bankruptcy. I wonder what's going on. And we can be curious just like we would in any IFS session. So it introduces, and I find with clients that I would do financial planning for who are IFS informed, IFS, maybe they're doing some IFS therapy. The conversation is completely different
Hmm.
because we have parts talk.
It seems to me, let me ask it this way. It seems to me that if I was coming to you, that one of the first things we would do is talk about my parts before we talked about my money, or I mean, I don't know. Like, does it make sense that we talk about parts first, or sort of we're doing it all at the same time?
It depends.
Okay.
I would say in more engagements, especially when somebody is aware of financial therapy, because I have a financial planning firm and maybe 95% of the people that go to that haven't heard of financial therapy, are not going there for financial therapy. Now, they may discover it while they're there and they may decide to do some financial therapy. People that are coming with a financial therapy reference oftentimes will do a financial therapy session first
Mm,
because typically they're expecting a little different engagement. They're expecting a deeper engagement. And I'm thinking of one actually was an IFS therapist that came. We did a IFS a therapy session. Then she came on as a financial planning client. And that just really set the tone for her. And we're aware of the parts, we're aware of the primary blocks. Um, and we can work on that more knowledgeably. And then if we need another session, we can pop out and do a session. And there's no set protocol.
yeah. So what are money scripts? Let's talk about what money scripts are and
A
how they
money
relate.
script. Yeah, a money script is a unconscious belief about money. It's typically rigid. It typically has money is evil. Um, all uh, all bankers are terrible. Rich people are crooks. Um, whatever it has is always never in it.
Could it be something like, I even if I have $5,000,000, I don't have enough money? Or like real life example, we used to when my, ex-husband and I were first married, we were, like, 21, and I had this frozen chicken in the freezer, and I would not eat the frozen chicken. I was like, "We're never eating." It became this sort of joke for our whole marriage about my frozen chicken. I'm like, "I don't know where this came from. I don't know if this is a legacy burden," but I'm like, "We're never eating the chicken. The chicken has to stay in the freezer. We'll go spend $50 at, Red Lobster, but I'm not eating that chicken."
Yeah. Do you have any clue today what that meant?
That's a good question. So, parts-wise, I don't. I mean, logically, I can think about, and I don't know what this is tied to because it's not like my parents were depression parents, you know what I mean? Um, but there is something I think. Okay, so my head says this isn't coming from a part. My head says it's about scarcity, right? There's a scarcity of money. I think I have a part like that. Yeah, there's a scarcity around food and there's a scarcity around money. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's some scarcity stuff. I don't know where that came from, but
That makes sense to me. I had a part back when I didn't know I had parts. Um, I would always have orange juice in the freezer. And I had a belief, a money script that when I couldn't afford orange juice, it was a depression.
that's good. That's good. And do you know where that came from now?
Um, I've never worked on that particular part, but it would be I also had a money script, a fear of that the money will run out. So it's coming from that fear that the money will run out, so you had better save or hoard. So it's definitely tied into a money script. I'm trying to and I could trace that back to when I was around 8 years old. And my mother came to me and said, your father's probably going to have to shut the doors of his company. And in a couple weeks, he's going bankrupt. And in a couple weeks, we don't know where we'll be. Probably not something you should share with your 8-year-old child. We call that financial incest was the original term. That's not a term that's well received by a lot of publications. So we call it something else. Uh, Lack of financial boundaries.
That's so good though, right? How many of us have that in our lives, right? Like whether what our parents I don't wanna interrupt you, but that I love that and the financial incest, like, I get why that's a triggering term, an upsetting term, but that's really good just to notice how where that has been in our lives, like, how our parents and how, like, even thinking about me talking about money with my son, like, um I joked about the fireplace because I live in New Hampshire and it gets cold here, and I joked that our fireplace, like, "Don't shut the doors because heat's expensive," which heat is we have old heat, it's expensive, and so I was joking about, like, "We don't have enough money. You need to keep the doors open for the fireplace because I want the heat in the house, right? I want the heat from the fireplace to be in the house." And so it became this joke, but then I'm thinking, I hope he knows that's a joke, right? Like, so anyways, I wonder about just the comments that I make, how he's what burdens I'm giving him from just sort of this, we don't have enough money to heat the house. Leave the fireplace doors open.
Right. And that leads into a question I get a lot from parents is how can I avoid giving my kids money scripts? Now, let me further say money scripts aren't good and bad. They just are. All money scripts are true. All money scripts are false. It just depends on the circumstances. And
Mm,
what we have is we have these young parts of us that adopt a money script. Let's take it like a money script of keep all the doors open in the house because we can't afford uh, the money. That could be really true growing up, being in poverty, and you learn that money script. The problem is that part doesn't recognize when it's become an adult and when there is enough money and all the doors are always open.
yeah, yeah, and then
And
always
it's
orange juice in the fridge or chicken in the freezer. Yeah.
so parents are always worried, am I sending the right money script to kids? And if anybody's worried about that, you can relax that part because you have no control over what the money scripts are that you're giving your kids.
Hmm.
It could be, you could think overtly, I'm giving them this while you're not even aware of another money script or what they could be picking up the exact opposite of, of the message that you may be sending. Um, I can think of a pair of twins in my town that grew up with very different money scripts. They're raised by the same parents. They're twins, for heaven's sakes. The same economic situation. They have totally opposite money scripts.
Isn't it interesting, right? I mean, that's just sort of it sounds like money scripts are burdens, like the
Yeah.
burdens of and right, like how we pick up burdens, and I think about this, with my son and even, obviously with my own parts of, like, the burdens I picked up, even if it seemed like my family, they worked so hard to make sure that I had the opposite, but it's almost like they worked so hard to make sure I had the opposite. It was very clear to me that they were working hard. They were ma they were working really hard to make sure that I knew that I was wanted, which told my parts, "You actually weren't wanted. That's why they're working so hard at it." So, it's just interesting to think about that.
As you say that, I also think we talked about polarizations are huge in financial therapy. So are legacy burdens.
Right, 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 like how grandparents, ancestors, how everyone sort of dealt with money, and then how our parents dealt with money, and yeah, yeah.
Yep. And if your grandparents worked real hard to give the same message to your parents, and they're working real hard to give the same message to you, that may not all be your burden.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's really clear when we think about people that will say, okay, well, my parents were raised during the Depression. And so this is how they handled food, or this is how they handled money, or they're hoarding money or hiding money. And we can really, it's almost like we can see legacy burden more clearly with money than we probably can see it with so many other things.
Yes, they're huge. They're huge when I work with people not of the U.S. culture, and all of the legacy burdens that can be involved in various cultures. And they can be so, like any burden, so constraining, so destructive to
Mhm.
parts and to the internal financial system, as I call it.
I like that.
y-
Mm.
They're huge.
Internal financial system, that's interesting. I have parts that are like, I don't it's like kind of like food parts, which I think this was interesting you said this. I have parts that, like, I don't wanna deal with it. I don't wanna deal with like, I have no internal financial system. We just sort of have money, spend money, have money, spend money, have money, spend money. Like, that's but, yeah, so, yeah, I interesting. I have an internal family system around money, an internal financial system.
We all do. And and even if the system is make money, spend money, that's the system, right? And all the parts are on board in I think in my latest book, Coupleship Inc., which is a do-it-yourself guide for couples around financial therapy, and it has an IFS overlay in it. And we vision this as all your financial parts are in the boardroom, and the one at the head, the CEO of the internal financial system, her feet don't quite reach the ground on the chair,
Aw. Mm.
and they're all very young, and they have the adult herself locked up in the cabinet or locked out of the boardroom.
That's great. That's great.
They're running the company.
That's wonderful. I love that. I love that. Um, well, I mean, we know this, right? Like, think about like my own internal financial system, and then being in a relationship with someone who has their own internal financial system. And we often, we partner up with people that aren't the same as us, right? We don't partner with people that are the same as us. And so tell me about your book. Tell me about this book, Coupleship, and how you begin to work with couples around their internal financial systems.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth because we show this as a merger, like in the corporate world when you have a merger of two companies. This is a merger of two individuals that have these internal financial systems, and they have all these young managers, and they're all getting together now, deciding how are we going to do this, and it can just be exponentially more chaos than there is individually, right?
Right.
So it's a huge challenge. I think any couples therapist knows that there's three people in the room. There's partner one, partner two, and then the coupleship.
It's good. Yeah.
So it's fascinating bringing this information to a couple. I can think of one that I recently worked with. I gave them the Enneagram first, which was eye opening to them. We had a 6 and a 7,
Mm.
one wanting safety and one wanting to live life and experiences. And then I gave them the blended, how a relationship looks like that. And so they had done a ton of work before we even got started. Like somebody's been following us around. And so we went through, I had IFIO, and using IFIO and the U-turns and things kind of went through. They heard each other for the first time. And at the very end, I remember saying, how would it be if somebody um, gave you a spending plan that you'd feel safe with, to the 6? Oh, yeah, that'd be great. And to the 7, how would it feel if somebody gave you a spending plan that would give you experiences? That would be great. And both of them are like, we want these spending plans. It was just a beautiful watching these two folks that were at every part of their marriage great until it comes to money, and we can't talk about money.
Mm.
And watching that come together. I've had couples say, "Why is the only place we fight about money in your office?" And I said, "Well, where else do you talk about it?"
Mm. Well, my guess is that's part of the money scripts is we don't talk about it, right? Like, it's not like it feels like that. It feels like there's some shame, and we haven't talked about that yet, but there seems to be some shame around even just talking about it. Even just talking about it with your close friends, like forget your partner, just sort of talking about it with someone that you love and you talk even like my girlfriends, right? I love them. We talk about everything, but like, are we talking about money? No, never. Like,
There
never.
is so much shame around money. I remember the first financial therapy workshop, we did them for 5.5 days back in 2007, I think it was. And I'm walking with the therapist that I was co facilitating with. And he says, "There's more shame in that room than any workshop I've ever conducted." I said, "Well, wait a minute. Um, you're a level 3 certified sexual addiction counselor." He says, "Yes, I am. And I'll repeat this. There's more shame in that room than any workshop I have ever conducted." Um, it's just so shame goes hand in hand with money. And I speak to financial planners on occasion, and financial planners and financial investment advisors don't think they have any shame around money. So I say, let's just check this out. In about 30 seconds, I'm going to ask you to come up to the front of the room. There's imagine a line up here. To the left of me is you're worth nothing, or you're minus, you're insolvent. To the right of me, you're worth over $10 million. And I want you just to line up on that line where your net worth is. And you can see the blood draining out of their faces. Then I say, okay, I'm not going to ask you to do that. Let's test it out another way. Tonight at the reception, just everybody you go up to, shake their hand, introduce yourself, and tell them how much you're worth and how much you make. And again, you can just hear the nervous laughter, like, and that's what we don't talk about. We hear money all the time. It's in the news all the time, but we don't talk about our personal money because all of the shame that's attached to what I make and what I'm worth. And
Mm.
it there can be shame if a person's worth over 10 million, just as there can be if you're insolvent.
Wow. So I have parts that are like, yeah, that's why we just make it, spend it, and don't talk about it.
Yeah,
Okay, as I say that, I'm like, right. That's how my parts handle shame, right? It's sort of like la 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 la, right? We're not gonna talk about it, disconnect, numb, I'm not even here. I'm like, "Oh," like, in this moment, like, "Oh, yeah," because that's one of my favorite players. One of my favorite parts is this, like, dissociative disconnector that's like, because 'cause I'm a 3, so we're gonna disconnect because we got stuff to do, right? So we're gonna disconnect and not really be here because we're busy, busy. And I'm like, "Oh, wow." So, of course, that's gonna be really intense. That part that's my coping skill is gonna be really intense around money.
right. And imagine being in a environment, in a container where that part can talk about that shame and not be shamed and not be judged, and can actually find out that its intention of, let's say it's spending, the intention of spending. There is a good intention. And likewise, the saber, there is a good intention, and they can be recognized for their good intention, for their good hope, which
Mhm.
is almost missing. That's missing from a lot of therapy, period. But definitely around financially, because there is so much judgment and shame that you ought to save, you da 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 da. And discovering, wow, every part has a good intention. Every money script is put in place, every burden is put in place with a good intention, and actually probably saved that young person for a while. And it just doesn't know things are a little different now.
Mm.
And we can get our needs met in different ways.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I was thinking, yeah, I think we handle these parts like we handle addicted parts, right? Let me put you in a box. Let me give you a Excel spreadsheet and and not that there's anything wrong with Excel spreadsheets, but, let's give a behavioral plan. So if I'm just gonna smack a behavioral plan on it, then without the parts having some agreement, then my system's gonna respond to that. Like, it's not that, hence the apps. I keep buying the apps, and then, "Oh, I don't know why the bank thing didn't connect, so I guess I can't use the app." Like, "I just spent money on a stupid app." Yeah, did not have internal consensus on that.
We can white knuckle any behavioral change for 30 days. Our managers can do that, right?
Yeah.
But when the exiles start screaming, that can fall apart. And we know the firefighter steps in, which is your addictive cycle. And the addictive cycle is very alive in our finances.
That's good. Rick, how can people find out more about you and about what you do and your books, and how can people find out about you?
And there's a number of places you can Google me, Rick Kahler, Kahler. I have a podcast that you mentioned, which is the Financial Therapy Podcast. I have two blogs. Financial Awakenings is kind of more of the personal financial blog, and the Advanced Wellbeing blog at advanced-wellbeing.com is more financial therapy. There's lots of bleed over here. Um, I also have a talking financial therapy, kind of an office hours I do once a month, and you can find that and just show up, and I just spend an hour with questions, and usually there's about a half dozen folks that show up to that. And then the books, which I think all of them are on Amazon.
That's great, Rick. A lot of your life's work is out there. So many resources are out there. So I just love that and appreciate that. I wanted to say that my co-producer Jeff went to your workshop last year at the conference and just raved about how great it was. So I know that you've spent so much time putting together IFS financial therapy. So thank you for that. Thank you for this. I think we could talk for another hour. But I appreciate you. Anything else you wanna say before I ask my last question?
Um, no, I appreciate the discussion. It's energizing, and I really appreciate your engagement and intuition. Could you say?
Thanks, Rick. I I appreciate that.
There's a difference with an interviewer, and I'm interviewed a fair amount, and you remind me of another interviewer on uh, public broadcasting that is so engaged and just, I mean, really applying and following the information, and that's so much fun to be taught, really talking with someone rather than kind of a robotic. Okay, here's my next question. I didn't hear a word you just said.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. That means a lot to me, so I appreciate that, Rick. And coming from you, that's really special. So, thank you. Okay, so if you were not doing all the stuff that you are doing and probably have done, and you had to do something different, what would you do?
Yeah, I would probably hunt thistles.
Right. So tell everybody what this is that you spend hours doing on the weekends.
I had a part of me that decided to rid my neighborhood of Canadian thistles, bull thistles, hound's tongue, the little nature's Velcro that sticks to you, and mullein, which looks like a single corn stalk. These are all noxious weeds. And in our area, there's a $500 fine if you have them on your property.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Uh,
Didn't realize that.
Parts of me that kind of all came together. And there's the part of me that loves to hunt, and that can be hunting mutual funds, hunt research, or just loves researching and doing things like that. There's another part of me that enjoys being out in nature. There's another part of me that likes exercising, and when I do this, I have about 55 pounds uh, of thistle killing fluid on my back, going up and down this little canyon I spoke of. So it's kind of a win-win trifecta, and I don't think that my perfectionist one parts are involved in this at all.
Yeah, right. Well, Rick, this was great. And I just appreciate you and all you do for the IFS world and the IFS community. So thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Tammy. It's been a privilege.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you left a rating, a review, a like, comment, share with your family, your friends. That would mean so much to me. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or on Amazon. You can visit my website, tammysalinger.com, or you can download a free Get to Know a Should part of you. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and at The One Inside on Facebook and on YouTube. Jeff Schrum co-produces The One Inside, and I am forever grateful for Jeff. Also thankful for Jack Reardon for creating the music, and just thank you for listening. 6 seasons, over 1 million downloads. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you in this community. I'll see you next time.